If you're looking to add some colour and character, there's a few techniques we can apply to the fretting hand that will spice it up nicely. Number one, the legendary Hammer-Ons. We can use these in melodies or chords in a few different ways. They're a great way to add an extra rhythmic layer. The main principle of a hammer-on is to play a string, in this case the open G, and I'm going to take my middle finger on the fretting hand and bang it onto, in this case, fret 2. So we're going from the open string picked to a hammered on 2nd fret. Because we're using the fretting hand to tap on the string and create the 2nd note here, it has a much smoother sound. This is called legato. The way to get precise with this is placement on the fret. We're looking for the 2nd half of the fret next to the fret wire, and then just hold it down pressed on the string. I'll start with the example of chords, and when we're doing nice open strumming chords like C, A minor, G, E minor, we have a variety of fingers that we can hammer on. So in the C, a nice one, tried and tested, is this middle finger here. So if I fret the C chord and then lift that middle finger off the string, strum the chord, and then hammer that middle finger back onto the 2nd fret of the D string, and it adds a secondary aspect to the rhythm. So just practicing that, we can experiment then with different fingers. Maybe hammer the 3rd finger on, maybe hammer the 1st finger on. And it gives us options then to just make that chord a little bit tastier. When we're looking at a G chord, we can do the same thing. We can experiment with the different fingers. A really common one is the index finger hammering on 2nd fret A string. Keep the index finger off, strum the chord, hammer it on. And just get your ears used to that secondary note. For the A minor 2, we've got a few different options. So we have the 3rd finger, we have the middle finger, and we have the index finger. And that's before we even start adding pinkies in. And then when we play the E minor, we can use either of those 2 fingers. We can also, because that adds a real nice rhythmic feel, hammer the whole chord on. So open strings, and then hammer that E minor chord on. So I'm going to play through a chord sequence, C, A minor, G, E minor, with a simple hammer on to give you an idea of how it feels. I'll do it without hammers on first, once, and then with hammers on second. We can also use hammer-ons to add melodies between chords to take us from one chord to another. Flavour. So to take us into the C chord, if I play open A, hammer on 2nd fret A, and then strum the C, a little melody to join us to the G. So if I go to the C chord, we've just strummed that down up. I'm going to take the middle finger off, play the open D, hammer on 2nd fret D, take the finger off, and then strum the A string where my 3rd finger is, 3rd fret, and then jump to the G chord. We're going to take the G to the A minor by lifting the index finger off the A, play the open A, hammer onto the 2nd fret, play the open D, jump to the A minor chord. Then the next hammer-on finger I'm choosing is the index finger. Open B, 1st fret B hammer-on, up pick back to open B, play the G string which is fretted at the 2nd, and that's going to take us to the E minor chord. Playing through that whole sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 2, pull-offs. They often come coupled with hammer-ons, but they deserve their own space in their own right. Pull-off works in the opposite direction to a hammer-on. Pick with your pick or your thumb while you're fretting the note, and then secondary pick that string. So that's 2nd fret A string to open. So we still get the picking sound, but it's got a softer tone to it. So we've got to pull the string down a little bit and re-pick it. We can use these in much the same places that we use hammer-ons, but in order to give you a wider palette, I'm going to look at some different examples. A great rhythm to work around the E minor chord using a pull-off. So we can play 2nd fret A string, pull off to open A, 3rd fret E with the middle finger, and then fret the E minor chord, but play the open E string first and strum the remaining chord tones, so slowed down. Moving on to an example in a D chord, we strum the D chord and then pull off using the middle finger on the high E string to the open string. This is a really common sound. This is a D to a D sus2. Another example would be an A major chord. We rake the A, pull off the 3rd finger on the B string to the open string, and then pick the G and the D coming up the chord. And that just gives it a little bit more character. Putting these in a sequence to give you an example. 1, 2. We've got a further exploration now where we can use the hammer-ons and the pull-offs used in sequence. We can use hammer-on, pull-off sequences in anything we've covered so far, but throwing a new chord into the mix, that rhythm on the E major chord is just awesome fun to play. So fretting that open E major chord, the focus is going to be the 3rd finger, the ring finger on that fretting hand. We're going to play the open D string with the picking hand, hammer that 3rd finger on, and then pull it back off again. So start by practicing that. Hammer on, pull off. Hammer on, pull off. The main thing to note is that the other fingers are still holding the strings down because we want those strings to continue ringing out. The sequence I've put together for this includes my pinky on the 3rd fret of that low E string here. So we play open E string, down, up, strum on the chord tones. At this point we lift our 3rd finger off, pick the D string, hammer on, pull off, up, pick the A string, then pinky goes to 3rd fret E string. You can follow it with this one. So you've got an alternate sequence going on, playing that together. And we can build up a really awesome bluesy sounding rhythmic riff at different speeds there, so have a play around with that. Here's the 3-chord sequence so we can put some of these into practice. C chord, down, down, up, lift the middle finger, play the D string, hammer on to the 2nd fret, play the G string, come back up to play the D, pull off to the open D string, and then pick the A string. Then we're on the G chord. This is taking us to an E minor, so we strum, down, down, up. We take the index finger off, quick hammer on. So a really grace note hammer on, 2nd fret, pick it when you've taken it off again. Pick the E string that has the middle finger on, exchange that for the index finger, 2nd fret E string. Then we're on the E minor chords. Down, down, up, take the fingers off, hammer on, down, up, take the fingers off again, hammer on, down, up, and one more time, take the fingers off, down, hammer on, down, up. Slow play through. In this lesson I show you how to play Brown Eyed Girl with the intro guitar lead line and a breakdown in the middle where you can put some of these techniques into practice.